Hey, we're here with Marty Garza. Last episode we talked about kind of how he got into the monster truck world, and we started talking about the first Overkill truck. So kind of go from there. You got the first Overkill truck built, or you kind of built it. Tell us a little bit about the building process.
Well, I actually had it built in Corpus Christi. I at that time didn't have a facility to build a truck. My obsession was really in the design more than anything. That's the part that has always been most appealing to me, is the engineering side of it. So this friend of mine, had a shop in Corpus Christi, and so the truck was actually built at his shop, and I was driving back and forth constantly trying to get this thing done. And it was a pretty long process, because it was I know it's really hard to put yourself in that place today, but that truck was really very advanced for the time period in which it was designed, because it was actually designed in '87. It was built in '88 and it came out in '89, but it would have, had it come out, let's say 6 months earlier, it would have been absolutely state of the art. It's just that it came out right at the time when Taurus 3 and Bigfoot 8 came out, where all of a sudden there was this new paradigm of what the next generation truck was going to be.
Yeah.
But it was very successful at competing against the trucks it was designed to compete against. It was really designed to compete with Bigfoot 4, USA 1. Right. It was designed to be a notch above the Leaf Spring truck. It was a 4-lane truck with 15 inches of travel. It wasn't really very controllable suspension travel, because it was still emulsion shocks.
Well, you were on an airbag too.
Right.
And they build a lot of pressure up and then want to unload.
Right, but for what it was pretty advanced.
Oh yeah.
But very quickly after coming out with the truck, I was already in the process of designing what became Maximum Overkill.
Yeah.
And then right away when I got the truck done and went out on the road, this was something pretty new to me as far as traveling across the country. Because where I live in Texas, everything was far from me.
Yeah.
So I would have to go out on the road for 3 months at a time. And very early on, I ended up getting on a tour with Jerry Richmond, who I had previously met through Steve Hess. Steve Hess and I had been friends, and he had introduced me to Jerry, and of course I knew who Jerry was. He was very well known for having built Terminator and Lethal Weapon, so I admired his work already. We hit it off really well right off the bat.
Yep.
Well, turn of events, we end up on the same tour together, and he really showed me the ropes. He's the one that got me through all the teething pains at the beginning, and then eventually, as I got into the design and construction of Maximum, Jerry came to work for me and started driving the trucks for me, and I think we worked really well together, and then of course, we got that ball rolling, and then Steve Hess came on board when Steve sold Nightmare. He came to drive for me, and then shortly after that,
they gave me an opportunity. That was I'll never forget, my first show was Bangor, Maine in November, I believe. And Jerry called me. I knew Jerry. I really didn't know you. I mean, I knew you, but not as well as I knew Jerry. And Jerry called me and said, "Hey, we need you to do a show for us." And I'm like, "Really?" And so I hauled Overkill up to Bangor, Maine in November in a snowstorm, and had no idea what I was getting into. I mean, here's this, I always drove a front engine truck with a little horsepower, and I get into this big killer horsepower rear engine truck, and my first pass, my rear end passed at my front end, and I landed in, I think, the fifth or sixth car the tailgate hit, and I came back down on its wheels and went, holy cow. And I remember it was for Chris Arell, the promoter Chris Arell, and I remember him coming over afterwards and says, "You be too crazy." He talked French. I can't really talk, but he says, "You be too crazy. We don't want that in this little building. You settle down." And I'm like thinking, yeah, I want to settle down, because I wasn't expecting that.
But we got that a lot. Got that.
Oh yeah.
You guys need to calm down.
But that truck had a lot of horsepower. I I mean, tell a little bit
Yeah,
about that. You
and
always
there's-
had good running motors.
And there we go, this 6 degrees of separation thing, that motor that was an Overkill 1, actually, I got that from Alan Pizzo.
Okay.
That engine was in his White Knight.
Okay, yeah, the
His
little
Ranger, yeah. And it was a Cobra Jet, 514 Cobra Jet heads. We put an 871 blower and injection on it. That thing woke up, and yeah, it ran really well.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was, of course, it was the precursor to what that fed the hunger for more power.
Oh, yeah.
And when Maximum came out, we pulled out all the stops, and that thing, had a killer 572 built by Jeff Fowler Engines. That thing, it was wicked. That truck was fast.
Oh yeah, so that was neat. I mean, I kind of felt like I was really given a great opportunity by you because, if I would have stayed with Dabney, I really didn't have a lot of future with Dabney, other than I was building my own truck, which eventually became the War Wagon. But, and then of course, you were wanting to build another truck when Maximum, and you guys kept telling me I was going to graduate into Maximum, and I was so excited. I'm like, man, I'm going to be in Maximum, And then, of course, you guys had that devastating fire.
Right.
And that kind of ruined my career with Overkill. Not because Marty, he offered me to stick with him, but I just knew it was going to be a huge undertaking, and there was, I said, let's, you just deal with what you got to deal with, and no problem, And so tell us a little bit about Maximum first, and then let's talk about maybe a little bit with the fire and kind of how that transpired into Extreme.
Maximum was pretty revolutionary in that it was really a very different take on what a monster truck could be. And I caught a lot of flack for that when it first came out because people didn't quite grasp. And again, this seems rather strange looking back today, but because that's the way everything is now. But at that time, the idea of a rear engine truck with the engine was down low and you could actually see the engine under the body, that was really odd. There was really nothing like that. This asymmetrical layout with a carrier bearing 2-piece rear drive shaft and a low center of gravity concept. Nobody quite understood the logic behind it. Like, it's a monster truck. It's supposed to be big and tall. Like, we're trying to race these things. We want stability. I kind of came from different types of racing. So, as much as I love trucks, I was still very heavily influenced by other forms, sports cars. I was into sports cars from a very young age also. So I tried to bring some of that into the sport. And it was initially not well received because it was unusual. But very quickly, it gained traction because people started seeing how well the truck performed, how well it handled, and then with that killer motor, it was quite. That truck's biggest problem was traction. Just harnessing the power was the biggest challenge. So we kind of brought these new technologies and new philosophies into how a truck could be built with Maximum. So when it came time to build the next version, we wanted to take this even quite a bit further. Lower center of gravity, quite a bit more suspension travel, and all these things. And it was really, Extreme was really designed to be a very, racing specific design. It was designed for straight line dry racing, so it had a long wheelbase. Nothing on that truck happened by chance. Every detail was planned in advance. But right when we were about to begin construction, we had a brand new set of tires that came from Dale Harris with Casper. He had these tires that were on his Land Cruiser, and they were a brand new set of tires, and I begged him, you gotta sell me these tires. Every time I would see him, sure enough, he sells them to me. We get them to the shop, and shortly after that, we had a fire and lost we had a bunch of parts for the truck. So that was a big setback, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you guys are enjoying these, stay tuned. Next episode, we're going to start up from here and talk some more about the fire and then how Extreme Overkill came around.